Welcome to Campo and Joe. We appreciate all y'all tuning in. I like to say all y'all. I'm kind of a Southern guy. Coach is kind of a Southern guy. But it's Facebook Live or it's the 1010XL YouTube channel. We like to talk Jaguar football. We're breaking it down in the offseason. Joe C. from XL Primetime. You can catch me noon to 3 weekdays with the gang. And then Coach Campo, he likes to come in on Tuesdays and Thursdays and say hello. What's up, Coach?
Hey, everything's good. I got a little allergy going, which you could probably tell in my voice, although my voice is a little raspy anyway. But been in Florida for a long time. They say if you've been in Florida long enough, you'll get an allergy, and I think I have it.
But I have to admit, I am surprised. He told us earlier you've never had allergies.
No, never. No allergies in anything. Now, I did have two guys tell me, one of them my son, that I need to get honey. From the local honey.
Yes.
Okay, so that's my next move. I'm headed over. I'm going to get some local honey to take care of this.
You know what?
And I mean local honey.
Yeah.
You know, that you eat.
Like not going home to
not
your wife.
Not a local honey. I got one of those already.
But it's funny because I've heard this, that apparently there's something that the local bees are doing that will help basically work against the local allergies.
Absolutely.
And I had never heard it before, but like I'd say, I don't know, a handful of years ago, I was told this, and I'm thinking I didn't really try it because I don't have allergies that bad, but I do get them from time to time.
Right.
And then when they get you, they knock you down.
Yeah, well, it's just that, it just comes a time during the day where you have about 20 nose blow sheets,
And it's, hey, in today's Rona, if you go anywhere and cough, Coach, they could cuff you up and take you away.
Absolutely. You gotta get behind something when you cough.
Now, the other thing about honey is that whenever you would get a cold and you could hardly talk, you would take honey and lemon and you'd warm it up. But then I got in the habit of putting a little bourbon in there too. Yeah. So that was totally different. That was a hottie toddy.
You have a tendency to put a little too much bourbon in there.
That was my medicinal.
From what I understand, but I don't want to go. I don't want to go any farther.
That was my medicinal recipe. All right, now let's get into a few things that kind of the talk of the offseason with the Jaguars, and just specifically this week. The NFL Combine begins, so I'm going to get your take on all that. But let's start with a couple of pieces of news. Shad Khan comes out, releases a statement, and says that Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke are working so well together that he's not going to make a move to bring in anyone under Trent Baalke, meaning an assistant GM, and he's not going to make a move to hire an EVP. What did you think of all that?
Well, it goes back. I kind of felt, number one, that after listening to him talk, the amount of times he mentioned Doug Peterson, and I think Doug Peterson has really impressed him on his knowledge of how to put a ball club together, what his offense, he wants his offense and defense to look like, and who he wants in those roles and what it takes to be in those roles.
Right.
So I think that has kind of impressed him. And on Trent Baalke, I was one of the ones that said, maybe they need to clean house and treat this like an expansion ball club and start from scratch. But I also said at that time, and I think we all kind of agreed, that what happened in last year's draft, which Trent Baalke, I'm sure, was a major, I'm not sure how much Urban.
He recognized a few names.
Yeah. But
let's go get that guy.
But the Baalke thing, when you look at Trevor Lawrence, ETN, you don't know what ETN is going to be, but you have a pretty good idea that he's going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
And then you got Campbell, you got Little, you got the safety,
Cisco.
Mm-hmm. And, I was with Tafele, so I'm not sure. Tafele, everybody's saying that he's not the right guy, but I still think he's a player.
Right.
So if you hit on the
fourth round pick.
Yeah, if you hit on the 4 or 5 of your top guys, that's a good draft.
Yeah.
So, the combination of Baalke and Peterson has impressed Shad and what he's seen in the building. And I thought right along that if they brought in an EVP, it was going to be eyes and ears for Shad, not drafting, not coaching. I think he got into that with Coach Coughlin, that he wanted to do a little bit too much with how the team was made up as opposed to how are these guys working together? Are they coming to a decision together? Those kind of things. So I'm not surprised. I don't, the scouting stuff has been done already, in my opinion, plus what's going to happen between now and the free agency and now in the draft.
Right. I think we need as clean a model in this offseason as you can possibly have. And that means, okay, Baalke's been in the building. Doug Peterson comes in with the plan. You and I definitely share the same sentiment about Peterson, that he will come in with a plan. He coached under Andy Reid. He's won a Super Bowl. He knows what success looks like. And if you go back in time and you think about this coach, Shad Khan hasn't, I don't think you could name another guy that has come in with as much experience and as much success as Doug Peterson. And the entire time that Shad Khan has been here, he said okay to Mike Mularkey coming in the door. He didn't hire him. He said okay to Mike Mularkey. 2-14. He lets go of the general manager, lets go of the head coach. Then we had retreads in Mularkey and Doug Marrone that weren't nearly as successful as Doug Peterson. First-timers in Gus Bradley and Urban Meyer, certainly not nearly as successful as Doug Peterson. This is the best coach with a plan coming in the building since Shad Khan's owned this team.
Yeah, there's no question, Joe, and you said it just a minute ago. This team needed inside football organization. Yeah. I don't question the organization that Shad Khan has put together from the standpoint of very successful businessman,
right?
Smart guy. I think he probably dots the I's and crosses the T's. But football-wise, that building is what's important to winning and losing. And I think Doug brings that to the table. And whatever you feel about, I got kind of mesmerized by how many people hated Trent Baalke. But in reality, no matter what that is, if he understands personnel and he had a good draft last year, there's no reason to think that he can't do it again, especially with Doug Peterson there with him.
Look, it's convenient to throw darts. It's not as easy to give hugs and compliments, and especially in today's social media world. And I think Matt Hayes on XL Primetime described it as an echo chamber. Once somebody says it, a lot of people say it. And look, Trent Baalke's record in San Francisco, not so great. And there's enough chatter that suggests that Baalke can undermine other people in the building. Well, if nothing else, and I may be dead wrong about this, but if nothing else, Baalke knows now that everybody knows about Baalke, right?
Correct. And I think that combined with, from what I know of Andy Reid and Doug Peterson, I don't think Trent Baalke is going to undermine Doug Peterson.
I agree.
I think Doug Peterson's strong.
Yeah, I agree.
And he's been in the league for a long time, and he's been with a guy that's strong. And so, to me, I think, again, just like you don't know which player is going to be really good.
Right.
You don't know until the proof is in the pudding. But I'm confident that they've put a plan together there. Shad's at least put in place a chance to change the culture in the building.
He's always let people do their job, and now he might have somebody who can do their job and do it well. And I think you and I share the opinion that Peterson is going to win his share. It's not like they're going to be battles or arguments, but he's going to win his share of key decisions. It's not going to be, oh, well, Trent, what do you think? Whatever you say. He ain't going to do that.
No. And I know him well enough, and I know his background well enough that that's not going to happen. And I think the other thing that, as a head coach, it's not all about the X's and O's. It's about teaching the guys and leading. And the one thing that he's shown is that he can lead. I'm talking about Peterson.
Right.
And so, to me, he's going to be a focal point now in the building.
Yeah. I like it. I'm not going to clobber it. I'm not going to say he said one thing and now he's doing another. I know that Shad Khan, and I think I've made this point to you before, no one is more embarrassed about what has gone on than Shad Khan. I don't think you can there are fans out there that are embarrassed. Nobody is more embarrassed than him. You want to know why? Because he's had to write the check for the embarrassment. And a particular bad hire, unfortunately for Jaguar fans, was Urban Meyer. And I believe he did that on his own. Nobody else had anything to do with that. He said, I'm zeroing in on this guy. So he's embarrassed by that. And I feel like he wants to come in there and make sure that he trusts a guy who now will make him look smart for making a decision.
And I think that was one of the reasons that it was a protracted interview process. And I think out of that interview process, and I said it right from the beginning, that was a fact-finding situation.
Yeah, you did make that point.
Because I truly believe that they had their eye on Peterson from the very beginning. And if somebody else had stepped up for Peterson, I think he would have stepped up for Peterson a little bit more quicker.
Yeah.
But they got an opportunity to see how other organizations work.
Yeah.
Because when that guy comes in, he's not talking to, as an interviewee for the head coaching job, he's not talking to Shad Khan about, well, if the guy goes in motion over here, I'm going to have my guys do this or that. He's talking about, how am I going to run this program, and how can we be successful? I'm going to be successful with the players we have, and I'm going to be able to do this and that. So it really comes down to, I think Shad learned a lot, and now he's looking at the thing with different eyes.
Yeah.
You know, when he's in that building, he's watching Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke work. And I don't know that he did that before. I think he might have just gave off free reign to whoever's in there.
Yeah, he believed in people, and that's not a bad quality to have. It really isn't. So we're now knowing that these are the two, the brain trust, and Shad may break a tie here or there, but I still believe he's going to let them settle it, because he's not a football guy. He's not a guy that is taking a look at, and Derrick Henry's one of our bobbleheads over here. He's not stumping for any one player as a owner. I think he's going to let those guys figure it out. And I don't think Doug Peterson had a battle with Howie Roseman up in Philadelphia.
Right.
I think he let Roseman do his job picking personnel. But I think he's also, and you might lend some expertise to this, you're going to be judged on wins and losses. You should have a say when you really feel passionate about who your personnel people are going to be.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of it is by committee. The one thing that they're a little bit behind on this year is the fact that Doug doesn't know the scouts that well.
Okay.
Because everywhere I've been, if it came down to a push and shove, you know, a guy that will listen would say to the national scout, Jim, what do you think? Well, you know, I've watched both of them, you know, and I like her. Bill, what do you think?
Right.
And you make a rational decision on the thing, okay? Well, the first year we were in Dallas, Jimmy counted on us to make a lot of the decisions on players because he knew us and how we graded and how we looked at things and what our scheme was a lot more than he knew the guys that were scouting that particular first year.
Makes sense.
Then they made some changes, and then it was more scout-centric in the decision-making.
And Jimmy was an eye for talent guy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think Peterson is as well, from what I understand.
Right, and I like that part. So let's go to the NFL Combine, because everything is going on. And as a head coach, kind of walk us through this. Now, we've got a couple of weeks of Combine action, but kind of give us an idea. You as a troop of coaches, scouts, general manager, whomever, how does it all come together?
Well, the first thing that happens, obviously, and to me the most important part of the Combine is not necessarily the workouts as much as it is the interviews.
Okay.
Now, the workouts themselves, you know, the position coaches and the coordinators are in there. The coordinator's in there for all of them. The head coach is in there for all of them. The GM, whoever, the decision makers are in for all of them. But the specific position coaches come in just for their group when they're working. And during that period of time, the guys that really show out, and it's a statistical game there. You're not looking at any film. And there's really only a couple of drills that they do to watch a guy's hips move, some of that kind of stuff. But the real thing is how they run the 40, their vertical jump, and they get to do it all at one time as compared to the old days where you had to go to every school just to get information, not just and they put it all together. So the guys that show up there are the guys that just jump out at you that are not the high-ranked guys. Okay. You know, somebody down there at number 50 or 51 of the 100 guys that are there or whatever, you know, busts out a Ford 240, all of a sudden you're going to watch more tape on that guy. So
you take note.
So that's the start of it. But the real thing that happens is each team has a room in a hotel.
Okay.
And they set up interviews with the top guys, might be 1 through 30 in their ranking system, which they already have up there. And that's where everybody together in the organization If a DB's in there, it's a DB coach, the coordinator, the head coach, the scouting director, psychologists, whoever's involved in some of that decision-making, and they stress them in there. They stress the player in some way, shape, or form. They ask questions that make him answer quickly because it's only a 20-minute period, and they see how guys handle when they're pushed a little bit on putting things on the board, that type of thing. That's where the head coach gets a lot of information mentally about a guy and what his background is and how quickly he'll learn. On the other hand, in another big open building is a table foot of when the DBs are in of DB coaches. And these players come through, all of them. And they go from table to table to table to table. But you have a list of who they want you to talk to.
Okay.
And if one is talking to the Philadelphia Eagles over here, you have a runner as a DB coach that's standing right there. Yeah. And as soon as he finishes, he grabs them and says, come on over to this table.
Good.
And you get some information and you put a grade on the kid based on a group of questions that show what you would like to know about the kid.
I always like to joke, it's like speed dating.
Yes.
It really is, because you have to make, sometimes it's a little unfair, you have to make some declarations about an individual in a short amount of time. Now, you've already done all your other work, like you're saying. Right. It's not like you're just, this is the first time, but this might put a stamp or might put a little concern next to a guy's
Absolutely. Name. If a guy doesn't react real well under those circumstances, you know, when it's 4th down and 1 and they go no huddle, you know, he may not react in that situation either. So the combine to me is more mental than it is physical. When I went there as a head coach or as an assistant, you know, I watched the guys work out. And I just would I had a 5-to-1 thing. And if I watched him hip turn and they do an explosion drill, I would put a 2 or a 1 or whatever. But I'd come up with a total and I would rank the guys off of that total. But then I would go back and watch the kids that were high up on the ranking system on film again. To determine, you know, it's not about how fast he runs the 40, it's how he plays football.
On the field.
So the combination of those things, I think you get a chance to see a lot of players quickly in the combine.
All right, so, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about pro day once we get to some of these pro days, but how much is locked in on a guy and where you might have him on your draft board coming out of the combine before you ever go into pro days for some of these players? Is it solidified and then it gets, I don't know, like the final grade is put on the pro day, or how does it work?
Well, no, the board is already up.
Okay.
They have their board up over there. Now, I don't know if that's the way it's going to stay with Doug Peterson coming in, but the scouts have already put the board up. And then, as we've talked about before, the last 2 weeks before the draft, for example, then they go through every player. Okay. And that board might change based on a combination of people. But the pro day is just another example of the combine, only you're up close and personal. Okay. And the number one guys, like, for example, Neal is coming into the combine. Yeah. The offensive tackle.
Yeah, Evan Neal out of Alabama.
Alabama. He's coming to the combine. He's going to go through the medical and he's going to go through the interviews, but he's not going to work out. He's going to do his workout at home. And the thing about that is you're much more comfortable doing it at home than you are at the combine.
Sure.
You know, and so you really see the kid probably at his best at his home workout.
Right. He's got everything set up for him to succeed there.
Right.
You might, if you're on the other side, meaning you as a coach or a staff, you're not setting them up to fail, but you are putting up some tripwires here and there at the combine.
Yes, and really over there, you really want to see, now you want to see the workout. Because now you're standing right, you're there and I'm here. And I'm watching the guy accelerate. I'm watching the guy come off the line in the 40-yard dash, those kind of things. When I first got to the NFL, that was the main thing. I mean, all our assistant coaches, we were out.
Right.
Just like recruiting. You know, we were out everywhere. And you know, it was, you know, just like recruiting, we were out during the week and in on the weekend. Yeah. Out during the week, in on the weekend. And so we saw a lot of guys right up close and personal. And I think there is an advantage to that. And I think it's an advantage for a player when he's right there at his home turf.
Absolutely. He's made plays there. The talk right now is the tackle. We mentioned Evan Neal, University of Alabama. We know how good he is. He's like 6'7". He's 340 pounds. He's unbelievable. And then you got Akeem Ekwonu from NC State. Now, I'm just going to give you, Coach, and you can just probably focus in on the tackles right now.
Okay.
But I'm just going to give you Mel Kiper's first board. Actually, this is his second board, 2.0, mock draft 2.0. He has moved Akeem Ekwonu into that number one spot for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's got Aiden Hutchinson going to Detroit with the second pick, Evan Neal going third to Houston. Let's just keep it right there for right now. I think Ekwonu and Evan Neal are going to be swapping that top spot depending on what mock draft you're looking at. A couple things that you like about each one of those tackles.
Well, I think Neal is the best all-around guy. He's very athletic, a little stiff at times in pass protection.
Okay.
I think that's the difference. When you look at Ekwonu is a better pass defender than he is a run blocker. So if you're looking for a left tackle, the athletic ability shows out a little bit. And that's where, there may be a decision. I think it's going to be a really tight decision.
Okay.
When I look at the guys, I think Neal is a little bit better. If you just look at the overall prospect going forward, he's big, he's strong, he's physical. He's not a bad athlete by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
Maybe not quite as physical in the run game as Ekwonu. Ekwonu is very athletic, not quite as physical, but very athletic as a pass protector. So to me, it's going to be a lot of offensive linemen is in the eyes of the beholder. What do you want out of that guy? And that's where Doug Peterson's going to come in, and the offensive line coach is going to come in.
Right.
And they're going to say, hey, look, I like this, this, and this. I don't like this. And that's how you make the decision. For me to say Neal's better than Ekwonu, I haven't seen enough of them to do that. But I do know I've seen enough of them to see those traits, which is stronger than the other.
And it'll be fun kind of going through you when you see some more video as we go along, be it the pro day or whatever, but they're just in shorts and T-shirts, so we can't quite say for sure. You still got to go back and look and see what they did in ball games. And I've said this forever, Coach. I'm half right, half wrong. Alabama players look great because great players are next to them. Right. And we've got to remind ourselves. Right. And Ekwonu didn't necessarily have the same luxury up at NC State. So Ekwonu's 6'4", 320, Evan Neal 6'7", and in that 340 range. Do you make any determinations with 3 inches of height difference at the tackle position?
No, the thing that I would make a difference on would be arm length.
Okay.
Because the arm length is so important on keeping these, edge rushers off you.
Sending them up the field.
If the edge rushers get on you, you got a problem because they're so athletic. So the arm length, which is something that you find out for sure at the combine.
Right.
If you're there, but you get it in your pro day as well, is more important to me than necessarily height or even weight is in a lot of ways. It's how physical, how strong you are, the bench press, the explosion things. That's why you want to see the vertical jumps. We're not worried about the 40s, but we're worried about the explosive things where they're having to use their explosive speed in their lower body.
I always like reading poetically the scouting reports on these guys. I may break that out on you during one of our shows because I get a kick out of the way they write these things, but I'll wait. I'll spring that on you later.
All right. So
grades that you have, at least what you've seen right now from some of the experts, Evan Neal versus Akeem Ekwonu.
Evan Neal, 6'7",
Okay.
And that's a guaranteed starter first year. That is not projecting a Pro Bowl player or an All-Pro player or a perfect player.
Explain a little bit the numbers that you're talking about, because these are numbers that, as you're saying, It's not a this year alone. It is a grade based on players coming into the National Football League and the type of grade that they get.
It's a projection. If a guy gets an 8.0, and by the way, this is what the analysts use, but this is actually the grades that most pro teams use
when you're putting your draft board together.
When the scouts are putting their grades on. 8.0 is perfect. You know, there's very few guys ever going to get an 8.0. 7.3 to 7.5 is a projection of being an all-pro player. Very few people get that either because it's a projection.
It makes sense.
The guy can be very, very good and never make all-pro and be a 10-year player on 3 Super Bowl teams. And then a 7.0 to 7.1 is a projection to a possible Pro Bowl player, has that ability, has that upside. And then 6.7 to 6.8 is a year one quality starter.
Okay.
And both of those guys, Neal is a 6.76 and Aquano is a 6.52.
Okay.
So Aquano is a little lower below that level. Now, here's the thing, and I don't know this. Okay, so I'm telling you right now. But a 6.5 is a boom or bust. So there's something in there on this particular analysis.
With Aquano.
That there's something in there that may keep him from hitting that projection. Now, it's not a 6.50.
Right.
It's a 6.52. So he's headed for that quality starter in the first year.
Yeah, he's at the very least, he's over that Mendoza line, which is really important.
Exactly.
But one of the things that they said, technique started to break down as the season progressed with a series of repeated mistakes. So that's when
it might be mental.
Yeah.
It might be physical. You don't know.
Yeah. And all right. So are you trusting a scout there to pick up on that as the season went along, or are you trusting your eyes later? How do you kind of?
Well, the scouts, that's one thing you make a big mistake if in today's world, the scouts put the grades on. And, you know, you have a regional scout, you've got a local scout, a regional scout, a national scout, scouting director, assistant scouting director. All these guys are looking at guys. And the pro guys are even coming in and looking at those guys because they're comparing them to who they've studied in the NFL now.
Right. Yeah.
But the coaches also put a grade on them. And the coaches only see 3 films normally. And so they go to the workout.
Right.
And not everybody works out. You know, you don't go to every workout.
Yeah.
So to me, I put a lot of substance in what the scouts do, especially if I know who they are and what their expertise is. The other thing is there are some scouts that are very good at knowing what receivers, how they operate.
Right.
They're not so good at how a defensive lineman grade should go.
Yeah.
So you got some scouts that have a little bit different qualities, and you call on them in certain situations.
You find the guys that make the best decisions with the most important thing that they're talking about.
And a scout has to watch every film. And most of them have been watching them as a sophomore, as a junior, as a senior,
a lot of work.
From the very beginning. Because, you know, you can tell a guy that's going to be a player, when you go in to watch you, if I should be able to see Chief over there that's running the show over there with the
whether he has any potential.
Yeah. And so you put
Marginal.
him you put him on your list and then you watch him again.
Limited
as he goes along. I would say he's probably about a 3-1 from what I've seen of him so far. But
I'm not going to take this slander over here. I am an 8-0 coach. I am an 8-0. I'm a Destin Hall of Famer, and I'm not mentioning either of you in my speech.
Well, I'll guarantee you one thing, that what you do with producing this show over here, you are an 8-0.
Let's go. That's what I need to hear. Fire me up.
It's athletic ability that's the problem.
Yeah, that's what we're worried about. That's what we're worried about.
This doesn't look like 4.2 speed to you, Coach?
No.
And he's a quick analyzer, that's for sure. All right, on that note, we will say goodbye. He's got work to do till next week. We're going to see a few more of these guys from the Combine. And we'll at least throw a few more names out there because we just did a couple of tackles today. We'll look a little deeper. We'll start looking at these pass rushers, what the possibilities are there, and then a few other ones. Sound good?
Very good.
All right,
Always
Coach.
a pleasure. Thanks,
Always
Joe.
appreciate you jumping in. Campo and Joe, thanks for tuning in, listening wherever you find your podcast. Joe C. and Dave Campo, we'll talk to you next week.